demonstration. We are wearing the uniforms of Spanish infantry and artillery soldiers that were here in San Agustin in 1740. This is the same uniform that is worn by the soldiers that fired the cannons at the Castillo de San Marcos in town. That's the large fort. The reason that this was the year that was pegged was because it was 2 years before the largest siege ever laid against St. Augustine. General Oglethorpe came down from the Carolinas with 20-some ships, almost 17,000 thousands of men will agree to that. It's not our area of expertise. The reason we're dressed this way today is because tonight we have the changing of the guard. This is the time of year where those of us that are here in town recreate the changeover of the guard in St. Augustine from Spanish to English.
Tonight it's just change of guard, Spanish to Spanish change guard.
The Spanish change of guard. Later in the month there's going to be, I'm going to get something right. Next month, the
First Saturday in December.
first Saturday in December, the English night watch, the British night watch, is going to occur here in town. That's quite the spectacle. This evening we're going to be marching from the city gates to the plaza, and we're going to be discharging the weapons, recreating the night watch, changing of the guard in the evening here in St. Augustine in 1740. Everyone will be wearing the same uniform we are wearing now, coats, going to march into the plaza, discharge the weapons, encourage all of you to go. Normally, we are wearing the clothing that would have been worn here 446 years ago, not 1740, 1565. In 200 years, the piles of dirt that you see in the field, you probably saw on your way here. What you did not see were the archaeologists that are digging in them Monday through Friday. They've been mapping out this settlement off and on the University of Florida for the last 30 years. This was the first settlement site of St. Augustine. In 1565, this was where Pedro Menendez landed. It's where his 800 colonists disembarked. And St. Augustine was the first of 7 settlements that would be started by Don Pedro Menendez de Aviles between 1565 and 1566. Within 20 years, however, only St. Augustine would still be in existence. The largest settlement was not St. Augustine, it was Santa Elena, some 400 miles to the north of present-day Parris Island. Pedro Menendez had started missions as far as Chesapeake Bay in modern-day Virginia and Maryland. You have to understand that in 1565, Florida stretched from Nova Scotia all the way to the Rio Grande, in modern-day border between Mexico and the United States, and stretched all the way to the Mississippi. They knew where these geographical locations were, and they had claimed it. The problem was holding on to it. North America would become the battleground for the European powers for 300 years. And Florida, along with many other parts of the country, would change hands many times. The cannon we're about to fire is a replica of a type of cannon that was here in 1565, even though we're dressed in 1740. This type of cannon was popular in use from the early 1500s to the latter 1500s. It's a breech-charged muzzle-loaded cannon. That means the barrel comes in 2 sections, the rear breech mag and the forward muzzle tube. Gave this gun a high rate of fire, but its design was inherently inaccurate and was unable to withstand the greater pressures of improvements in gunpowder, and so eventually became obsolete. But in 1565, I assure you, this was the height of technology. The cannon had an effective range of half a mile. The larger cannons that were here in 1565 could shoot a cannonball 1.5 miles, but they were slow to load. And at 1.5 miles, they were not accurate either. You had to be shooting at something the size of the town. For a ship, they would wait until a a vessel had passed the bend coming into the estuary about three-quarters of a mile away. Each gun would begin to fire each battery as the target came into range of the individual guns. You notice I'm saying guns, not cannons. They refer to cannons as guns and the small arms by their individual names. If someone said they were a gunner or that they were going to their gun, they meant a cannon. Now there were 20-some cannons here in 1565, more than enough to be able to cover the entrance. The reason? It's narrow and shallow and only small boats could come in and out. Large ships had to anchor offshore. Smaller boats were used for service and supply. The smaller boats could be destroyed with just one hit from a cannon of this size. You have to understand, this cannon's firing an iron ball the size of an orange. Half a mile away, it's still traveling in excess of 250 miles an hour. You can imagine a wooden boat about 20 to 30 feet long with anywhere from a dozen to 15 men, all of them pulling on the oars. That cannonball comes crashing through at almost 250 miles an hour. Someone's going to get their feelings hurt. At the very least, everyone's going to get wet. For this reason, St. Augustine was well defended as long as it was on this side of the river. Now, the settlement was only here for 9 months. A fire destroyed everything because it caught the gunpowder on fire. It blew up. They decided to move it from this location over to Anastasia Island. They were there 5 years before they realized that anyone passing by with cannons would be able to destroy their fortifications. So they moved back to the side of the river, and the town's grown from there ever since. The first wooden fort was here. It was called St. Augustine. The second and third wooden forts were on Anastasia Island. They were also called Fort St. Augustine. So were the fourth and fifth forts that were back on this side of the river. Down in the plaza, there's a statue of Don Juan Ponce de Leon. He's standing like this, except he's pointing north. The fourth and fifth forts were right near that plaza. Tonight, when we discharge our weapons, that's the same plaza, the Plaza de la Constitución. The sixth fort was the only fort that was not called St. Augustine because it was built half a mile north of the town. They built this special fort because they heard that Francis Drake, the famous English pirate and slave trader, was in the area. So they built a brand new fort not far from where the cross is in that grove of palm trees. There's a shrine. It's not for the fort, but that's about where it was. And they built a brand new watchtower out on Anastasia Island so that they could spot him in advance. Well, guess what? The only thing Francis Drake saw as he was passing by? The watchtower. Had they not built it, he would have missed St. Augustine. But he stopped, destroyed the watchtower, realized that the town was across the river, and over the next 3 days plotted and planned and was able to circumvent the brand new fort and take it. First he took the fort, then he burned the town, then he came back up and burned the fort, and then he left. People ask why didn't he stay? Because you can do hit and run tactics against the Spanish Empire at this time. You must understand that St. Augustine was on the edge of the largest empire in the world. It was the greatest empire the world had yet ever seen. Spain had a hard time keeping up with troublemakers, but once they caught up with you, they had more than enough capability to wipe anyone off the face of the earth once they had all their armies together. So he had to leave. When 6 was destroyed, they built 7. They called it San Marcos, or Saint Mark, for the day it was dedicated. 7, 8, and 9 were all called San Marcos, and they were made of wood. Number 10 was made of coquina, and it's still there, the Castillo de San Marcos. Again, if you haven't been, I encourage you to go. Now, we're not going to be firing a cannonball today. It's too sunny. Or maybe too cloudy. Pick one. But I am going to fire enough gunpowder to give you an idea of the sight, sound, and smell of an artillery piece from this period. Keeping in mind that what you're about to hear is only 1/10 the amount necessary to fire a cannonball as far as from here to the middle of the river. For those of you wondering how they aim their cannons, a lot of math. To be able to sight down the barrel and hit something, you have to be at point-blank range. If you wanted to hit something far away, you would have to go to calculate the mathematics required to get the cannonball from here to there and hit the spot that you wanted. To do this, they needed to have the correct direction, compass. They needed to know the direct elevation of the barrel, plumb to the earth. This is called the gunner's quadrant. This shows 15 degrees. That's the level of the cannon now. It goes all the way up to 45. It's the highest angle any cannon can obtain to send a cannonball as far as it will go, even in modern artillery. But this cannon is limited to 15 degrees. It's called a flat trajectory cannon. For this reason, the cannonball is still traveling very fast when it hits the ground. But it was perfectly suited for defenses here. They also had charts to know how much gunpowder was used to send the cannonball a certain distance at a certain elevation. So there was a great deal of calculations that had to be made. So today, we're going to see, we can't get anybody on that beach over there. I know they're all pirates because they don't have Spanish flags. Anyone in this part of the world that wasn't Spanish was a pirate. And any Spaniard that didn't have a license to be in this part of the world was also a pirate. In fact, you had to prove very hard that you weren't a pirate. And you would have tried very hard because it was a hanging offense. So, keep our eyes on the beach. Even though this is only going to be 1/10 the amount, it is going to be loud. So, I'm going to yell fuego before I fire. You're going to see me cover my ears because we're so close I must. If you want to, feel free. If you don't, at least grit your teeth.
It's the tricky part, holding the camera and
Por España! Fuego!
nice.
Do it again. ¡Viva Estados Unidos!
Viva!
Ladies and gentlemen, we hope that has been educational for you. It has been a pleasure for us to have you. Gracias.
Thank you.